The more you dig in this book, the more amazing it really is.
God is going to use Jonah in spite of his sin, but he still goes after Jonah's heart because he wants Jonah to learn God's heart.
What's going on with irony as we start off in Jonah?
When you get into the masterful presentation of this book.
This week on the Reach Podcast. All right, hey everybody, welcome back. This is week number 2 on Jonah, and I am joined again by Dr. Mark Yarbrough, president of Dallas Theological Seminary. Mark, thank you so much for being back with me.
It's an honor.
We are going to dive right in. If you listened last week, we talked a little bit about irony and how that's at play in the book of Jonah. We're going to start looking at really the first half of the book. So what's going on with irony as we start off in Jonah?
Okay, yeah, 4 chapters, so we're going to split this up, right? We'll talk about 1 and 2. Yeah, when you get into the masterful presentation of this book, how it is presented from the get-go, the Hebrew ear that heard this for the very first time, they understood that there were some play on words. Now, they're real words, and it's a real situation. So as an example, when it starts off, the book does, right? The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh. And so here comes the instructions of God. When you're asking the question about irony, so let me just play with something a little bit. Irony is found in the fact that Jonah has a name, so it's always helpful if we're going to learn some Hebrew here. So if anybody is watching or listening to this, we would say, please repeat after me, Jonah. Jonah. So that is the Hebrew word for Jonah, as we say it, or unless you're from Texas and it's Jonah. And but Jonah is the Hebrew word. Now that is a word that's still used today in Israel. So Hebrew is the spoken language. And if you were staying at some hotel in Israel and you came out of your room and it's a beautiful sunny morning and you looked up into the tree and you saw something and you went to your tour guide and you said, Jonah. And they think you know Hebrew, right? And so you're going to go, Jonah, and they go, oh, tov, which is good. And then you say, well, Yarbrough didn't teach me any more Hebrew, so that's the only word I know. But Jonah means dove. That's what it means, okay? Now, it's also a proper name, but think of that irony related to this. When you hear the word Jonah, and it means dove, okay, and you think of the Bible as a whole, what do you think of when you think of a dove?
I think of Jesus' baptism.
Okay, you think of Jesus' baptism. New Testament, the Spirit descends like a dove. Let's go back to the Old Testament. If you are a Hebrew ear and you're hearing this, and you hear the word Jonah, what might come to mind?
The flood?
Okay, the flood. Yeah, there's one of 2 birds that are identified, and you are correct. The second one is a Jonah, right, that is talking about a dove is there. But did you know that a Jonah is also a sacrificial bird according to the Pentateuch? Yeah. So in other words, one of the birds that was sacrificed was a Jonah. So it's interesting that when they heard this word, it was like the word of the Lord comes to Jonah, and his name means sacrifice. And, you know, but the irony of this is that he's going to be anything but that. Now, it's not done yet. So his name is Jonah, son of Amittai, right?
Yes.
We anglicize it when we say Amittai. That word in Hebrew, Amittai, is actually a word that sounds exactly like the word for truthfulness in Hebrew. So here you have this guy that his name means sacrifice, and his genealogical name means truth. And he's going to be anything but a picture of sacrifice and a picture of truth. Does that make sense?
No.
So there's irony at the very beginning of this.
It's at the very beginning, and at the risk of saying this over and over, I guess we got to stop saying it. You could go along through the whole book and pull these kind of things out.
There are puns everywhere.
Yeah, it's so, the more you dig in this book, the more amazing it really is.
That's right.
So that's the setup. So we're introducing the word of the Lord comes to Jonah, son of Amittai. What is it? What's he supposed to go do? Yeah,
he's supposed to go to Nineveh, and it is a particular phrase that is used. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it. And then it says in verse 3, but Jonah got up and ran, right? I mean, and it's a fascinating phrase because it's what I sometimes will reference as the prophetic mandate. It's the same phrase that is used. The word of the Lord comes to the prophet and the prophet obeys. I mean, it's very simple syllogism. God speaks, his prophet hears, prophet does it. I mean, I could take you to a bunch of other passages. The word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab. So Elijah got up and went to present himself to Ahab. I mean, that's literally it's a formula that is used. And so we are shocked when Jonah doesn't do this. That's the issue.
Yeah, it's really different. And I don't think we said this, but Jonah's in Israel.
Yep.
Right. And so he's going to go off to another country.
Yes.
So, and I'd love for you to talk just a little about this. We talked about it in the introduction a little bit, but God's heart beyond Israel. Yep. I don't know if people necessarily know about this from the Old Testament perspective, but it's there all over the place. And Jonah's a great example. So why is God sending an Israeli prophet to Nineveh?
Yeah. It's because God always wants to bless the world through those he is choosing to bless. Now, when I say that, if you think about it, the nation of Israel was called by God, right? The line of Abram. And it wasn't because Abram was smarter or had a better bank account or more camels, right? I mean, it was just, he was called by God, and God made a promise to him. Now, the further you start studying that promise is that you realize that he says, and through you all peoples on earth will be blessed. So God is going to bless the world through the nation of Israel. And so God cares about all nations. The promises in the Old Testament to the nation of Israel are, as they receive the blessings of God, they are called to be stewards to give it to the world. I mean, that's why in the Old Testament, again, in the book of Exodus, the nation of Israel is referenced as a kingdom of priests. That's a very important phrase, meaning they are called to be a mediator of God's blessings to the world. And so here's what's going on. I think we've got a map. Can we throw up this map here? We've got a map. Okay, we're going to throw up a map here. And this is some of the irony. So as you see this, so he is called to go to Nineveh. Now we see where Nineveh is. So if he is in Israel, okay, so let's just, for the sake of discussion, where you see Tyre, okay. So if that is our sliver of Israel, and Jonah is called to go northeast, he goes southwest in order to go as far away as he can get. That's what I want us to see.
Yeah, I mean, why aren't we zoomed in on just this part of the map? Why is it so wide out?
Yeah, because he's going to go way over here. And there's a big debate of where it is when he flees to Tarshish, right? I mean, it's somewhere probably over towards Italy. And so, I mean, he is like going as far away. Like, look where Nineveh, put your finger on Nineveh and then go to the boot, right? If that's where it is, we're saying he's going way over here. He's going as far away from God as he can get. So he thought.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
I mean, so that's kind of this. That's a map is very helpful for us to see that. But one of the things that jumps out at this is that I have these faint memories of Sunday school right now when I was a little kid of going. I can hear my Sunday school teacher saying, "You can't outrun God," or whatever that voice is in your head. But how ironic is that? We have a prophet of God that thinks he can actually escape God's presence. Okay, we got to pause on that one. Every one of us think we can. Whenever we sin, whatever that sin is, we think God doesn't see it. Pick your topic. Make it as practical as you want. Whatever we're looking at, whatever we're saying, wherever we're going, there's nobody around here. And how foolish of us to think that we can run from the presence of God.
Is it also a good application to go, even in light of that, God still chooses to use us?
Without a shadow of a doubt. There's so many things that this book, again, we could do a podcast on this for hours and really unpack these things. Because yes, God is going to use Jonah in spite of his sin, but he still goes after Jonah's heart because he wants Jonah to learn his heart, meaning God's heart. And so there is all sorts of irony in this book.
All over the place. Yep. Okay, so what happens after this?
Okay, so there he is. He goes down to Joppa. You saw that on the map. He goes down south. I always find this ironic if I'm ever preaching this. I'm like, he literally goes down on board and he pays a price. He pays a fare. It is emphasized in the text for us to see it. Jonah pays a price to run from God. Okay. Man, there's applications all over this thing. I mean, he is running from God. And whenever we run from God, friends, that's what happens. We pay a price to run from God. Okay, so in the text, and we're not going to do a bunch of reading, but just to summarize a lot of things, God's not done. This is the amazing thing for me. Remember when we in last week talked about one of the dominant themes is that it teaches us about the heart of God? Well, one of the things that it teaches us is that God's patient. I am shocked. One of the things I'm shocked at in this whole story is that God just doesn't go, and it's like, he's done, he's over. And as soon as I say that, I am shocked that God didn't do the same thing with me. I mean, that's the story of every one of us.
100%.
I mean, if God judged us for like we needed to be judged, you and I would not be doing this, I assure you, right? And there would be no one that is a believer, because if we received the condemnation we deserved, there would be nobody left.
I can tell you what I don't want, and I'm trying pretty hard to be a good guy out here. I don't want my life being written for everybody to go read from God's perspective.
Yeah.
And yet here it is with Jonah in this one. So
look at what happens. I mean, God sends a storm. He chases him down. There's so many ironies, the sailors, these guys are afraid, and these are sailors. I'm telling you, when sailors are afraid, it's a bad storm, But there's this little irony again that in the midst of this storm, they're all about to die. And Jonah has gone below deck. He goes down. By the way, there's a Hebrew word that goes from beginning to end. Everything Jonah does is downward. I mean, he goes down to Joppa. He goes down into the boat. He goes down into the belly of the boat. We know he's going to get thrown overboard. He's going to go down to the ends of the earth. He's going to get swallowed by a large fish. He goes down into the fish. I mean, there's word plays all over this, okay? So he's down there asleep, and the captain comes to him and says this, "How can you sleep? Get up," literally arise, and call on your God. Now, here's what's funny about this. The word that the captain of the ship uses, arise, it's the same word that is used by God at the beginning of the book. Now, we don't always see it in our English text, but it says the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Literally, arise, get up. It's a Hebrew word, kum, and it's used several times throughout the book. And so even here we have the Gentile captain is repeating the words of Yahweh.
Yeah.
See, it's as if God's trying to say, hey, come on, Jonah, wake up here. I've called you to do something, and here you are trying to run from me, and you can't.
Hey, everyone. I'm so glad you're listening to the Reach podcast. Reach is brought to you by Search, a ministry that helps you share Jesus. If you like what you're hearing, you'll love the Reach series. The Reach series is our new self-paced video course that gives you what you need to build relationships and have conversations about Jesus in a way that fits you. It won't cost you anything, so check it out today at reachothers.org. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
And so after this little exchange, what happens in the story?
Okay, so they cast lots. Man, that would have been really good Hollywood. I'm telling you, you could make a great movie out of this.
Have they not done that?
What's that?
Made a movie out of Jonah?
Not that I'm aware of. There have been episodes and scenes and things like this. I think this could be a phenomenal movie, seriously.
That's a great idea.
In light of all of the rich biblical media that's coming out in written form, as well as The Chosen and House of David and all this stuff, it's got a lot of people zeroing in on how do we understand the realm of the Bible, which I love every minute of it because it leads to great discussions with people. But these lots, they cast lots because these are superstitious and or some type of religious people. They cast lots, and in all likelihood, it was the dividing type. So in other words, you had a group of people, and in essence, you would divide them into two, and you would roll the lots, and it would say A or B. And then that other group was off, and they would just keep dividing, and get smaller. And so the text wants us to see that the lot falls on Jonah. It means it came down to two people. God is in charge of the lots. And can you imagine this dramatic moment? It hits, and it's probably bones, by the way, that would point. And we know that out of the ancient Near East, and we know that out of the biblical text. And can you imagine that it tilts, and you don't know which way it's going to go. And then at the last second, it falls and points to Jonah, and all eyes zero in on him, and he's busted. right? I mean, there he is. It's a powerful thing.
The other guy's relieved.
Oh, yeah. No joke. That's right. He's like, whew, I told you guys it wasn't me. And and then all of a sudden they play 20 questions. And Jonah actually says, I mean, they ask him the question, at the end of verse 10, what have you done? And there's this parenthetical in most of our English Bibles. They knew he was running away from the Lord because he'd already told them so. Well, the seas gets rougher and rougher. And Jonah, in essence, says, hey, throw me overboard. He has a death wish at this time. He would rather, listen to this, he would rather die than actually confront God.
And he basically says that in chapter 4, right?
Yeah, 3 times he has a death wish. But right here he says, you better throw me overseas.
Yeah.
And, he knows he's going to die if he gets thrown overboard. And this is the amazing thing, and I think we're supposed to see this. Look at the first word that you see in verse 13. It says, so after he has just said, throw me overboard, and the sea will go calm. And it says, instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Here's my point. Think of this. Think of the irony. Here, we're back to that word again. Remember what Jonah was supposed to do? Jonah was supposed to go to the Gentiles, lest their lives be wiped out because of judgment. Here are the Gentiles risking being wiped out because of this sea of judgment, lest the life of the Hebrew be lost. I mean, it is incredible irony.
Yes.
From beginning to end.
All over the place. And so I think we kind of figured this out later in the book at the end, why Jonah feels this way.
Yes.
But if we're reading the Bible as literature and pretending that we don't know the end, we only know it till here.
Right.
What are we supposed to think about why he's so upset? Why doesn't he just want to go do what God wants to use him for?
To me, this is the great mystery. And I really mean this. If we are just following the story, we're going, what is the matter with this guy? What's the matter with him as a prophet of God? He clearly heard the word of Yahweh. He heard the word of the Lord. He can engage with Gentiles. He talks with them here, right? And he does use some real cocky language. I mean, we don't have time to go back and really parse out verse 9, but when they finally ask him, who are you? And he says, well, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the God who made the sea and the dry land. It's a Hebrew cliche, and it's almost as if, well, you pagans, you all don't know. I am the one who truly knows. But here's the incredible irony again. He can talk it, but he's not walking it. He can say all the right words, but these Gentile sailors, they know that man right there, Jonah, is living the life of a hypocrite. Now, man, that's huge for us, because if you think about it this way, I mean, the number one thing that always shows up in every survey ever, I mean, I don't care if it's Gallup, if it's, you name it, of why do non-believers not listen to believers? And you know what the word always is? It's hypocrisy. It's individuals that say one thing and they live another. It is the age-old issue of leaders that fall. It is the moral failures. It is the little things in life of, they see us using our mouth in a way that belittles other people. It's bottom line, it's not living out the grace of God, right? And so there's that going on. And so it's a tragic moment in the book.
It's very tragic. And what happens next after this?
Okay, they throw him overboard, and the sea grows calm. And again, there's some amazing things that occurred. These Gentile sailors who called out to their own gods, little g, okay? It says now they cry out to Yahweh. So these Gentiles now, I'm going to phrase it this way. They come to some kind of faith in the God of Israel. And it says they make sacrifices and they make vows. That is critically important, because later in the book, Jonah is going to talk about doing that. And it's what in narrative literature, you always have to pay attention to this. When a key character says they're going to do something and then they don't do it. It's the law of omission. And so here's the irony. The Gentile sailors come to faith and they make vows and they offer sacrifices. And we don't know what that was in that context. But Jonah, who says the right words, whose heart is not for God, who is running from God, even though he knows he shouldn't be, says he's going to do all the right things and he never does. Does that make sense?
Totally.
It is a book of polarities here, and you've got to see it. We've got to see this when we're reading it. Okay, so that's how it wraps up in chapter 1. But there is this one little mystery verse at the end, and there it is. And you know where I'm going with this. It's either verse 17 or it's chapter 2, verse 1, depending upon your English version, but it says the same thing. But the Lord, L-O-R-D, by the way, remember, whenever we see all caps, that's the proper name for the God of Israel, Yahweh. But the Lord, Yahweh, provided a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was inside the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Again, to me, I look at this and I go, this is a flat-out miracle of God. Whether God made this fish on the spot, which he can do. I mean, if we're talking about the creator of the universe that can speak the word and things come into existence, none of this is too hard for God. Whether he had built that fish, and it started off as a guppy and just grew and got really big, and he had timed it to where this fish was swimming in this channel at this moment when he got thrown overboard. However God chose to do it, it's a miracle of God, because this fish swallows Jonah, and the text says, it says, from inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. It's the first time that Jonah actually apparently now faces God.
He's in a little bit of a pickle, though.
Oh, my heavens.
Yes. Sometimes happens to us when we pray, maybe a little more than we do.
Let me just phrase it this way. Everybody gets spiritual when they're in a ditch. You know how many moments I've had with people at hospitals? And I don't mean this as a joke. I'm just saying it's a reality of it is so easy to not think about God until you know you're going to have to face him.
I think you mentioned this in the beginning, but talk quickly about how important is it, what kind of fish, whale, whatever this is. Is it important?
No, not at all. I could take you to 15 commentaries in my office that are going to tell you the size of the sperm whale's stomach and the average Hebrew man and what type of oxygen he would have needed. All of that is us trying to scientifically prove a miracle. A miracle is a miracle because by definition it is a miracle. Now, I am not saying that God couldn't have used, I think this was a real fish. He really breathed somehow in there. Now, whether God pumped oxygen in, I don't know. I mean, the text doesn't say. What we know is that there was a fish that was designed by God to swallow, hold, incarcerate, transport, move the prophet, and to buy time for the prophet to hopefully, prayerfully come to his senses.
Yeah, and as we're talking about the reality of this too, I can't help but think this is just past Easter when we're recording this.
Yep,
You're thinking of Jesus using the story of Jonah in this verse as basically a foreshadowing, or he's comparing his death, his time in the grave, to his resurrection, and saying it's the sign of Jonah.
That's right. Yep.
A very real thing.
Yep.
Of all the things he could have picked in the Old Testament, he goes to the one that people go, that's not even real. And he's going, not only is it real, it's foreshadowing what's about to happen.
That is exactly right. Sometimes people will take that and they'll understand this to say, because of that Jonah died and he was resurrected. I don't see that in the text at all. He was swallowed by a large fish. It is the 3 days of being seemingly dead. Now, in Jesus, he used that as an analogy of saying, hey, just like Jonah was in the belly of a fish 3 days, I'm going to be in the belly of the earth 3 days. I mean, it is an analogy that he is using.
Yeah. So he's in the fish.
Yep.
And then we've got a genre change.
Yes, we do.
And what's going on with Jonah's prayer here?
Okay, this one's worth reading. Okay, I'm going to do it. It'll only take a minute or two, but listen to this. So Jonah finally prays, and here's what it says. In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From the depths of the grave, I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the deep, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents, they swirled about me. All your waves and breakers, they swept over me. I said, I've been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters, they threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains, I sank down. There's our word down, by the way. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you brought my life up from the pit, O Lord my God. I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols forfeit the grace that could be theirs. But I, with a song of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. Salvation comes from the Lord. Now, I always say this when I read that passage, is that it's the worst pun ever. But I'm like, man, it sounds so good, doesn't it? I mean, it's like, yeah, I got thrown overboard and I thought I was going to die and seaweed was wrapped around my neck and I was sinking to the bottom. But you, Lord, you brought my life up from the pit. And he's telling his story, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, a couple things for us to know. None of these words are Jonah's. Okay, that's real important in this. Jonah is a individual that knows God's word. And every one of these verses come from the Psalms. That's pretty big.
Especially to be able to pull them all together, because they're different Psalms too, right?
That's right. Oh my, they're all over the place. Oh yeah, they're 116, 108. I mean, you've got all these Psalms, and he just pulls it and he builds something. He builds like a particular Psalm of thanksgiving. So in other words, he used a model that the Hebrews understood. It's a particular psalm, and he tells his story, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's really good. But none of these words are Jonah's. So in other words, and I always think about it this way, it's because, he's in the belly of a large fish. It's not like he could, bust out the scroll and get his pen out and start writing or, make papyrus or, he couldn't do any of that. So he just mentally starts repeating the word of God. That's a positive. I'm going to argue that's probably one of the only positives about Jonah in this book. The old boy knew the word. He did. But there's a huge problem. Okay. And this is my worst pun ever. Okay. There's something real fishy that's going on here. But thank you very much.
We can add that in post.
Thank you very much. And there's something that's amiss. There's something that's awry with the text. Now, the way I like to look at it is that of all the ways that God could have responded to this prayer that sounds so good, look at how God responds. Verse 10, and the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. Now, the reason I want to bring that up as we wrap this thing up is that, look, God did pretty amazing things in the Old Testament. I mean, think of how he could have removed Jonah from the belly of the fish. Remember what happened to Enoch in Genesis chapter 5? He walked with God, and then the text, I love the phrase, this is the way I'm praying to go out this way. He walked with God, and then he was no more. Wouldn't you like to go out that way?
It would be awesome.
It would be fabulous, wouldn't it? And he was no more. Remember when Elijah went home? Great chariot comes down, picks him up. I'm like, not a bad way to go, right? I mean, I could do that too.
I'll take that one, yeah.
God could do miraculous things here. He could have removed Jonah from the belly of the fish and just plopped him onto land, and Jonah went, man, God, I'm off to Nineveh. But God directs that fish to vomit him onto dry land. Okay, I got real intrigued with this, and I was like, what is this word? I'm a word nerd, and so I really wanted to dive in deep and go, okay, what's this word vomit? Okay, so I'm not making this up, I did a word study on vomit, and I went total nuts on it. I mean, it's like 6 hours of my life that I'll never get back. I mean, I wanted to know what it meant in Aramaic. I wanted to see the word in Akkadian, Ugaritic. I wanted to look at every Semitic field around Israel in all of the languages. And I did find a couple of things. This one was stunning to me. Number one is that, did you know that every culture has a word for vomit?
I did not know that.
I didn't either until I wasted 6 hours of my life.
It makes sense, though.
It does. It's a very human experience. Okay. In this context, here's what vomit means. Vomit means vomit. That's what it means. Okay, it means like every horrible thing that any human being on the planet has ever experienced, because every human being that I've ever met has thrown up. It means puke. It means to upchuck. I mean, it means pick all of your descriptions that you want. It's as bad as it is. However, this word is used specifically in the book of Leviticus. And God said, listen to this, about his people. He said, if you go into the land, this is before they even went into the land of promise. He said, if you go into the land and you defile the land and you have impure hearts, he said, this is God speaking. God says, I will vomit you out of the land. It's the same word that's used right here. Something's going on, because here's the one thing that is missing. What is missing is that of all of the good things that Jonah said, God saved my life, I was dying, seaweed was wrapped around my head, he saved me, Lord, I promise, I'll make vows, and I'm going to do sacrifices, I'm going to see again on your holy hill, I'm going to be able to be at the temple again. Okay? I think Jonah was thankful that he didn't die, but the one thing that is missing in Jonah chapter 2 is this: he never repents of his sin. Ever. You see, we get duped into thinking, oh, he's come to his senses. But Jonah, and maybe this is a great place for us to end, we realize he's really got a heart problem. And that's going to come into play the further we move into chapter 3 and 4.
So is the vomiting an act of grace? I mean, is God responding gracefully to a bad prayer, essentially?
It's mysterious. Here's what I think. I think it's God's commentary on Jonah's prayer. But it is also grace in the sense that he is giving Jonah another opportunity to evaluate his heart. I'm going to argue, at least in the biblical text, when we get into this next week, Jonah never does.
All right. We'll leave that for the cliffhanger. Last thing I want to ask you.
Yep.
One takeaway from the first 2 chapters only, application point for us as we're thinking about how we share Jesus with our friends today. What can we learn from these first couple chapters?
I would say this. We will naturally be led to share Jesus the more we are closer to the heart of God. It pulls 2 things together that we talked about at the beginning. But one is a byproduct of God's grace. And the closer we are to God, the more we realize that he has saved us for a reason. As I frequently say when I'm preaching and teaching, he hasn't just saved us from something, he saved us for something. And it means that we have a responsibility to take that grace and to give it to others.
All right. Great way to end it. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Come join us next week. Thanks for listening to the Reach Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That'd be a good idea. Share it with a friend and leave us a review to help others find the podcast. Now, for more resources, please visit reachothers.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you.